Perfect. So welcome everyone who's just watching this later on. And this is our What is Spiritism online open study group. This is our third class. We are going through the biography of Allan Kardec, and we are up to page 28 of the book What is Spiritism. So this introduction was all about the beginning of Allan Kardec's journey. So we saw, where he started as a young kid and the work that he's done as a teacher and a scientist. And the beginning of the Spirits book codification was our last class, where basically we went through how the sessions, the seances, the meetings where all the mediums were gathered, how they all started receiving this, I guess, when the phenomena started, and then when the mediums that had the mission of codifying Spiritism along with him started actually receiving communications from these higher spirits. And he started organizing then this question and answer format where he would organize the questions in a very logical way. And also, we discussed a little bit about the scientific methods that he developed so that only the information that was confirmed in a number of groups of mediums that received the exact same information would be um, considered as truth. So, what we call in Spiritism as the universal method of verification of the knowledge, the universal knowledge method. So, it's basically his scientific method developed to make sure that he was asking the same question to different groups and getting the same answer before he considered that answer to be the right one. So just to make sure it wasn't influenced by the medium, the individual, or if it wasn't something of his own making. So that was his commitment to the truth. And we continue then with the work that he's done tonight by refreshing exactly that. So on page 28, we have a few things about how he would express this need to make sure that what he was writing, what was coming down to in summaries of the messages from the higher spirits that were working to bring about the information through Spiritism was the truth. So he said, everything must be coolly examined, maturely weighted and tested. If we distrust our own judgment, we must resort to other persons. So he was always very reasonable as a person and very humble as well. He knew that as a human being, he was also fallible. So he said, four eyes are better than two. So he said that if we're ever in doubt, this pronoun, this this knowledge of getting things verified by someone else would always be the best path to go. And he also said only false self-love or an obsession could make a notoriously wrong idea persist, one which anyone's common sense would reject. So I guess we can bring to our own reflection here, how sometimes we might be very sure about something in life, or, I don't know, no one is ever perfect. We're all fallible. So, he was such a knowledgeable man and he was always committed to the truth. And I think it's an inspiring thing for us to consider when we bring it to our own reality, um, to be a bit humble. And if we think something's not right as well in regards to what we're doing, to ask someone else, because maybe we might be, not 100% right regarding that particular idea. But in his case, of course, he understood the extent of the responsibility to pass on the information that was correct. So that's why it was very important for him to think about that only the ideas that were right, that were um, representing what the higher spirits wanted to, were the ones that he accepted and he put forth in the work that he did. So in that line, when he started examining what kind of communications were not exactly right, what kind of what kind of situations during the mediumship meetings that he got the information that wasn't 100% correct, he started observing patterns. And because it was the first time the mediumship as a phenomena was being thoroughly studied, he started composing this work that then became the medium's book later on. So I'm just going to have to make sure that my power is connected, because I've got a message here. My cable is connected, but it's not showing that it's charging. I don't want everyone to be lost. I think I connected now. Technology. Sorry. Didn't want to hang up on everyone. So so in January 1861, it's when he actually started the compilation of all this information regarding mediumship that then became what was later published as the Medium's book. So he, with his own words, said that we sought in this work the fruit of much experience and hard study to clarify all the issues attached to the practice of spirit manifestations. So everything they were learning in the different spiritist societies that were, part of the groups that he used to visit, because they started forming more and more groups. He wasn't the one running all of them anymore. He had, a lot of people that were interested in Spiritism, and they were in different parts of France. And they started then following some of the guidelines that he was sharing, but then they started learning all these things about the phenomena of mediumship, how it was developed, what kinds of mediumships people had, and also about the communications. When a spirit was appearing to be something they were not, what could you look for in the communication that they were making that would give away that they were not who they were saying they were? Because, the spirits are smart like we are. The difference is here in the physical realm, people can see each other. So if I go, oh, I'm the Pope, people are going to go, no, you're not the Pope, you're a woman, But if I'm a spirit, I could communicate through a medium and say, I am the Pope. And I could pass on a beautiful message and say, now you all have to do what I'm telling you. And if people did not use reason to question it, they would be following all these absurd ideas. So I think Kardec had this concern about making sure, verifying facts and not putting forth information that wasn't correct. So he started then compiling all this information. And in this book, there is the theoretical explanations for all the phenomena, the mediumship phenomena, and he developed some practices to conserve this quality with the communication and everything. So he actually shared all this advice in this book, which is still up to date, a very, very extensive knowledge source for whoever wants to learn about mediumship. So so he mentions here, the Medium's book is still the handbook for all who want to delve into the practice of experimental spiritism. Nothing better or more complete has yet appeared on the subject. It is still the surest guide for us to be able to safely explore the realm of mediumship. So whoever is out there and is thinking about studying a bit more about mediumship, this book is a must. Most of our spiritist centers that have mediumship development courses use the study of this book and other books of decodification, like the Genesis, that explain a lot about the exchange between the two realms. And we're going to see some of these aspects in this course, because later on the book we discuss that. But that's still a very good guideline, and that's when it all happened. And then in 1861, still, there was a big spread in the Spiritist ideas. So remember, it all started in about 1857. So this is like 5 years in, 4 to 5 years in, since the first publishing of the Spirits book. So Spiritism was then acquiring followers from all the social classes, but especially those from the working class, those who were going through a lot of difficulties. So they really looked for spiritist ideas, consolations. I think they were tired of the same ideas. By what I read in the book is um, people were going through a lot of difficulties, socially speaking, in Europe as a whole. And in Lyon, a lot of people started going to these meetings, and they actually became quite good followers. So he actually takes the time to acknowledge that first they were impressed with the numbers, but they also understood that um, quality was more important than quantity. So they wanted the people who were engaging themselves in the meetings to really, I think, understand the essence of spiritism. It wasn't like, just a group of people that would come through and go, oh yeah, I'm interested, I'm curious. So in the last class, I think Flavia went through the types of spiritists that he described. There's people that are only curious about the mediumship phenomena. There's people who are willing to learn a little bit more, but they're not ready to practice. And then Kardec starts describing what is a true spiritist, who is those who are going through the meetings. They listen to the messages from the higher spirits, but they try to really apply those into their lives. So those were the people who he considered the true spiritists. So he said that the people from the working class in Lyon, the city of Lyon, they were regarded the highest in terms of order, concentration, attention to the spirit guides, messages. They were people from all walks of life, men, women, seniors, young people. And he said that even children were very respectful and engaged with the spiritist message, compared to their age. And I think a testimony to this is the fact that some of the mediums that worked with the codification were actually children. So I think a lot of parents that had kids that had all this mediumship phenomena happening to them and they had no idea, they were seeking for this clarification through spiritism because they did hear about it in the newspapers. They saw that these things were happening, and if their children needed to develop the mediumship and work with a group, they had then the groups that they started back in this time to help them. So there was this spread of spiritism. And again, he mentions here, so the qualities of the true spiritist, which is what he was describing the groups in Lyon were exactly like. He said, the number of moral metamorphoses among the working class is almost as large as the number of followers. Nasty habits reformed, passions subdued, hatred pacified, homes turned peaceful. In other words, the most authentic Christian virtues had developed, all because of their unshakable trust in spirit communications and in the future that they had not believed in previously. Many of them come from more than 3 miles away in any kind of weather, winter or summer, braving everything in order not to miss a session. Theirs is not an ordinary faith, but one based on a profound, rational conviction that is in no way blind. So I loved highlighting this part because I think it resonates with what a lot of us are trying to do. Like we're really trying to seek that knowledge. We're trying to renew who we are. And isn't it, so much interesting that, 160 years back, when these spirits, they just got in touch with spiritism, they were so touched that they decided, okay, I can change my life. I believe in something. There's hope. And, these days, I think we work in trying to make the spiritist teachings available, and we're really trying to make way, at least here in Australia as well, to make it available in English so it's inclusive. But we are such a different society these days. We have access to internet, things are a lot easy, and still sometimes we get lost into the everyday life, and we forget that we are spirits first and we are living through the material life second. It should be more important to do this, to devote ourselves to improving who we are, because at the end of this life, um, we're going to respond for that. What have we done with the time that we had here? So I thought this was really inspiring, because we are maybe spiritists that I don't know if we were already in touch with that message back then in previous lives, but we have the opportunity in this life. And if we want to follow their footsteps, then there you go. We should be looking into those things, testing our faith, I guess, in a way. We do have tests, we have trials in our lives, but are our faiths unshakable, or are we a little bit shaky when that happens? So it's all good food for thought here, so we can think about it. And later on in 1861, another thing that happened that was a bit sad, but at the same time it worked in Spiritism's favor, was the notorious burning of books in Barcelona. So he started trips around Europe as a whole. So he went to Spain, and they had organized to ship 300 books. It was a variety of books. In the book, What is Spiritism? He actually describes all the books, all the materials that were there. There was about 300 exemplars, and he mentions the different books that were there. So there were, the Spirits Review. So there was a number of the magazine. Um, there was a lot of the Spirits book, the Mediums book. Uh, the book that we're reading now, What is Spiritism, was already published. So he published it as a manual, like as a short book for people, and they burned a bunch of those as well. Um, and the story of Joanna d'Arc, Joan d'Arc, um, that was psychographed by one of the mediums as well. So she actually dictated it through Hermance Dufault, a very young medium that used to work with Kardec. So yeah, there was about 300 of these books, and the Catholic Church, they were going through things that were shipped, and they were always working with the local government, I guess. So when they thought that this was something that could threaten the ideas of the church back then, they considered the books immoral. And Kardec was really upset when they said that the books were held, and he wanted to intervene. But the higher spirits went on and advised him, no, 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 don't do anything, do not intervene. Things are happening for a reason. And he listened to the advice that came in the meeting. He was very upset, but he did. And then after the burning of these books, all the newspapers were talking about it. Like, oh, they had this big pile of books burned in the middle of this square. And why did they do that? So people started getting really curious. What were those books about? Why were they burned? And the interest in curiosity in Spiritism in Spain increased. So, if they wanted 300 books to be available, they had like maybe double, triple the amount of people interested in Spiritism later on. So it was wise of Kardec to listen to the guidance of the Spirit, saying, do not intervene, because yeah, all the international newspapers in Europe were talking about this. And yeah, so there is on the book on page 34, he actually talks about how people reacted. Some people started going like, down with the Inquisition, how dare the Catholic Church do this? There should be some sort of freedom for people to be able to read those things. And then yeah, it became something to our advantage back then. And interestingly, so he then could direct some of the speech regarding, I think, those enemies of Spiritism, or people who were really interested in not seeing Spiritism progress, and how we would deal with them. And some of the dialogues he has with people in this book is all about that, because you had people from a number of I guess different faiths that were not really welcoming new ideas, and he was then able to develop some strategies and some guidance for us on how to deal with that. So interesting, because he said that if people, were horrified by the new ideas, Spiritism wasn't for them. So he actually wrote this bit that I think is really interesting for us to review. So he says, Spiritism is meant for those who do not believe or who have doubts, not to those that have faith and for whom their faith is sufficient. So if they were of a different faith, it's okay. Spiritism is not for them. So he said, it tells no one to renounce his or her beliefs in order to adopt ours. This is consonant with the principles of tolerance and freedom of conscience that it professes. For this reason, we cannot approve of attempts by certain individuals to convert the clergy to our ideas. Because some people got really fired up. They were like, nah, they should learn, they should accept the truth. And he wanted to clarify, no, like everyone has their own truth. If they're Catholic and they believe what the church is telling them, it's okay. They have their own faith. And he mentions, so they shouldn't be approving the attempts of people to convert anyone, because that's not the point of Spiritism. It's not to convert everyone to Spiritism. And he said, no matter what spiritual community they belong to, hence we will repeat to all Spiritists. And he continues, use kindness to welcome persons of goodwill. Offer the light only to those that are seeking it, for you will not be successful with those who already believe. Do not impose your faith on anyone, especially regarding the clergy as opposed to the laity, for you will be sowing barren fields. Make the light so evident, oh, so that it may be seen by those who want to see it. Sow the fruit of the tree and give it to the ones who are hungry and not to those who say they are sated. So this, like all Kardec's advice, is very clear, simple, and very practical. And I think it applies to this day. Sometimes I think we get really excited about some of the ideas of Spiritism and we think, oh, such and such would really benefit from knowing this. Or we hear a message and we go, oh, I wish such and so would listen to this. They really needed this. But we are only responsible for our own evolution. We're not responsible for other people's evolution. We're not responsible for converting people into something we think is truth. Everyone has their own truth. So his advice back then is still kind of up to date in a way. And it's true. If we make it evident that Spiritism, I think, is a nice philosophy of life by the way that we act, we will be that light. We will make people interested in knowing what is it that's different about how we live that makes us live, lighter way, or, if we live, we're hopeful, we have a nice conduct. I think that shows people sometimes more about the philosophy that we follow than the words or the explanations. Sometimes we want to just explain all these facts. Like, I don't think reason converts anyone. They have to be open hearted to a truth, and they will be ready when they're ready. When they're ready, if they look for it, the information will be there, the love will be there, the connection with the good will be there. It's nothing on top of it. And then on the 15th of January 1862, they've published the Spiritism in its Simplest Expression book. So that's a very tiny little book that we studied actually here in Light in the Shire as well before we started this. So it's a very clear and simple book that explains the fundamentals of Spiritism. So that's when it was published, and a lot of people actually then told Kardec that they got into contact with Spiritism because they actually read this little booklet and it made sense. And then, it was the open door to then start studying the other books. And in the last pages that we're going through today, Kardec actually left a note of gratitude because after all these events and after he's published all these other books, a lot of people started contacting the Spiritist Society, the Parisian Spiritist Society of Studies. And he got a special letter that had 200 signatures from different people in Lyon that really they changed their lives around because of Spiritism. So they were thanking him to be able to do the work that he did, even though he had all the persecutions, the inconveniences in his life. And he actually left a note of gratitude that's really nice. I'm not going to read it all, but I wanted to read a section. So he said, so he was referring here to the 200 people that wrote to him personally to say thank you. He wrote, "This fact, of which I receive the most touching testimonies daily, has paid me back with interest for all my hardships, all my weariness. I ask God for one favor only, that he may give me the necessary physical strength to complete the task which is still far from being fulfilled. But whatever happens, I will always have great consolation in the fact that the seed of these new ideas now spread everywhere and is imperishable. I have been happier than many others who have only worked for the future, while I myself have been allowed to see the first fruits." And he then leaves us some advice for us who are following Spiritism or trying to study Spiritism. So he says, "The nature of Spiritist work requires composure and concentration, and the latter is impossible if one is preoccupied with arguments and with displays of malevolent sentiments. There will be no malevolent sentiments where there is fraternity, but there can be no fraternity where there is selfishness, ambition, and pride." So this was his specific advice to people who were getting together, that were uniting in different Spiritist societies or Spiritist groups like ours. So he said, basically, yeah, fraternity is the number one. We need to practice amongst us, amongst the little groups that we form, the idea of charity, more than anything, discussions and, wasting time with details around how things are going to operate or not is a waste of time. He said, "Among the proud, who are susceptible to being offended by everything, the ambitious who feel mortified if they're not in charge, and the selfish who think of no one but themselves, schism is not far off, and with it, dissolution. That is exactly what our enemies want, and is precisely what they are trying to create. If a group wants to be orderly, tranquil, and stable, the sentiment of fraternity must reign." So, a big reminder that, our main goals in a group like ours is to be helpful to each other, to be fraternal, to develop true bonds. This is mostly important because it's us practicing the teachings that we are learning. Otherwise, there's no point. That's why I guess we like having a group the way we do, the structure that we do. Everyone's equal, democratic. So we don't give in to the little, oh yeah, temptations, oh yeah, who's in charge of what? No one's in charge of anything. This is not our work. We're just temporary helping with what we can. The centers that we build are not for us. It's the work of the spirits. I think we need to understand that. And his advice was, hence we recognize the true spiritists in the charity of their thoughts, words, and deeds, and know that those who nourish sentiments of animosity, rancor, hatred, envy, and jealousy in their souls, in fact, lie to themselves and only pretend to understand and practice Spiritism. Selfishness and pride kill individual societies just as they kill cultures and society in general. And that is so true. Um, if only we were more fraternal with one another, we would have less issues out there in society and um, in spiritual societies and in different groups, you know, in our families, in the communities that we live in, and etc. Okay, we got to the end of this bit, and there's only a minute and 47 seconds left before the call will drop. So maybe I will just finish the recording now. I'll reconnect if everyone's okay with this, and then we can open to questions and comments. Is that okay, Themis and Fla?
Okay.
Cool, cool. So I'll disconnect and reconnect because then we can finish up, wrap up, and then we can have our meditation with all the time in the world. The 40 minutes we got.
Okay.
Thank you so much, then.
Yeah.